Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about how much money to expect to earn from a market garden, or any small business really, what the next month looks like on our farm, and Food Safety Modernization Act exemptions. So let's do it. All right, well, welcome to Tuesday, everyone. I want to kick off the show with a shout out to the interview that Natalie Lounsbury did yesterday for the No-Till Market Garden podcast. It was about birds as garden beneficials, and it was very cool. Also, though, towards the end, Natalie gave her state of agriculture research with the funding freezes, and it's frankly pretty sad stuff. Natalie isn't just a podcaster, she's a researcher, and we as a community have directly benefited from her research on things like using the tillage radish for cover crops and other research that she did on terminating cover crops with tarps that was very good. I'll link both of those in the show notes, among other papers and that she and her colleagues have done. I mean, this is the type of research that does not now and may not ever again have funding. So I implore you all to go back to the podcast feed and give that episode a listen. I will link it in the show notes as well. She has a very balanced take, and it's worth listening because, for no other reason than Natalie rocks. All right. Well, March starts next week, which means that, well, for anyone north of Kentucky or colder than Kentucky, it doesn't really mean a whole lot yet, but everything is just about to pop off here. As I've discussed many times on the show already, you have to have a little patience and restraint in March, even here where it will feel like the spring for most of this week and for next week, but could easily dip back into beard freezing weather just for goofs one or two more times before the season actually starts. So my plan for the next month, or more or less, looks like this. In about a week, I will be planting out 1 tunnel to spring lettuce that I started back in January. In about 3 or so weeks, I will be grafting the tomatoes we started about a week ago onto the feedstock that we also started like a week ago. The onions that we started back in January will go in the ground in about 2 weeks, weather permitting. I don't like to plant onions until I'm confident we are past that last really cold snap of the winter, which, like I said last week, there is always one good cold snap in March. Snow, I don't so much worry about, not because it won't happen, but because in terms of crop damage, it's relatively minimal. Ice would not be ideal, though. So, whoever needs to know that we don't need any more ice, let them know. Appreciate that. The other thing I'm going to do is plant some onions in the tunnel around where I will be planting a bunch of strawberries this spring, which might seem like a bit of a waste of tunnel space, but remember that we have shrunk our operation down to about 1/4 of an acre from like not quite 3/4 of an acre. So bring on some dang tunnel strawberries for that space. I'll talk more about that when those strawberries go in the ground in a few weeks. But the thing with the onions is that, one, there are some studied benefits to planting alliums around strawberries that I believe that I wrote about a couple of those in the Living Soil Handbook. Or that was a dream, because clearly my dreams are super interesting. But also, two, the onions I'll be planting will actually not be for bulbs, but seed. I have these candy onions that survived the winter really well and still taste really good, and I'm going to plop those in the ground in the tunnel and see if I can't get some onion seed from them for next year. Now, candy is a hybrid. It's not particularly known for storage, so I could get an interesting diversity from growing the seed out, and if I could get something that's like sweet and stores pretty well, that would be awesome. We shall see. I guess shrinking the gardens has really started to mean that I'll just be using that excess garden space for more weird garden experiments and trials. That wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, but here we are. In fact, the other thing that it means is that tree planting season, which if you were following the show back in the fall, I talked a lot about ordering trees, and a big bulk of those orders will be coming in this month, or next month, March. In fact, this weekend I started laying out the plan for the last remaining bits of trees I've got coming. The next month will also mean a lot of seed starting and bed preparation. It's also, without question, the last chance to really kind of clean stuff up off the ground. I think I'm mostly covered on that, but for real though, everything is about to disappear into the weeds here in Kentucky. This is the land of just swallowing any toy, burying anything with grass. With all these wood chips coming in, you better believe that I'm also going to mulch absolutely everything that makes sense to mulch. That means all of our high tunnel pathways, which again, I do not mulch the field pathways because the mulch just washes out, but I like it in the tunnel. And we'll be going around our landscaping. Maybe landscaping is kind of a generous word. around our house. We'll go around some of our the trees that we planted, around our hedge wedges, just around everywhere that we possibly can put mulch. I love moving mulch, but pro tip, make sure you are conscious of rotating your hands and which stance you are using for shoveling the mulch into a wheelbarrow if you're going that route. My chiropractor can tell when I've been shoveling and hauling a lot of mulch because I tend to twist my hips, which causes a cascade of issues down my back. So that's fun. If you don't have a tractor that can move mulch, like I don't, the BCS is not quite a mulch moving piece of equipment. The chiropractor is one of my most important spring hacks for sure. Oh, and March Madness begins in March. We will still do the bracket challenge. I think we've done it for like 6 years or so. So I'll start that when the brackets are announced. And basically my life becomes work until 4 and then soccer until dark. So how does your March look? You feeling ready? I feel vaguely ready. Still got a bit of time to wait. Let me know. And up next, we'll look at the exciting world of food safety regulations, which I will try to make exciting as best I can. BRB.
Here we are. Every speck of weather is impeccable when you are near. And that's the truth, my dear.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by GrowSmart. Curious if your soil will be ready for planting this spring? GrowSmart can help you find out with their at-home soil tests. They'll ship it right to your door. Just send it back with your prepaid shipping and you'll have your lab results in just 2 business days. Their reports are simple with tailored seasonal recommendations for fertilizers and amendments. Order now at growsmart.com and use the code DAILY for 10% off. That's DAILY. Begin your soil prep now for a great spring with GrowSmart. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Joe Naaman Sessions, who writes, quote, "Thanks as always for what you do, Jesse, and always makes my day when I get my free consult. Feels like you're talking just to me, face-to-face, albeit with an audience. Awesome to hear. Thanks. I was curious if you could touch on your scale. Curious, as you mentioned, complying to Fsma, and I'm surprised you're not qualified exempt, and what you think the limits of scale of a bio-intensive no-till market garden are, i.e. how many people per acre or labor hours per acre, gross revenue per acre, etc. I know much of this will be highly contextual, but just curious what you think are what the upward limits are. Also, it just hit me. I am not advocating for not following Fsma because you may not have to due to exemptions. Rather, I was just surprised that it came up as a factor in your thought process. End quote. Awesome. A couple great questions in there, Joe. Thank you. So what I'm going to do with this is divide it into the next 2 segments. So first, let's just cover the qualified exempt stuff and Fsma. And then in the 3rd segment, we can talk about the people per acre / labor hours / revenue sort of part of the question. Okay, so the exciting stuff first. The Food Safety Modernization Act, or Fsma, was enacted in 2011, though the implementation of that was spread out over the course of many years. There are several different rules or parts to Fsma, but the one that applies to growers is the produce safety rules. Now, I want to emphasize that for most of you, Fsma will not apply. So here's how you know. Growers who sell less than $25,000 per acre on average worth of sales are exempt from Fsma standards, meaning you are not required to follow any of them, even in part. Also, growers whose end product is processed, like maybe you sell all of your produce to a salsa producer, you can also be exempt as long as that customer provides proof, and or your produce is rarely consumed raw. Think eggplants and potatoes and popcorn. The USDA has a whole list, and I'll post that in the show notes. Figs are also on there, which is a weird surprise. If those things are true of your farm, you are exempt from Fsma, which again is probably most people watching / listening. People who sell under $500,000 worth of produce over 3 years are considered qualified exempt. And more than 50% of those food sales are to what are called qualified end users, such as restaurants and retailers located in the same state, Indian reservation, or within a 275-mile radius of your farm, as well as consumers through direct marketing, such as online stores, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, CSA, etc. Anyway, those are all qualified end users, and if your farm meets those criteria, you wouldn't need to follow the standard safety practices, but would still need to keep records of sales to maintain that qualified exemption. Indeed, being qualified exempt means that many things in the produce safety guidelines would not apply to you, but you would need to track your sales records and the location of your customers. So our farm has been considered qualified exempt, but we tracked a lot of the other stuff anyway because there's some crossover with organic certification, like the manure rule, the 90-120 day rule. It's the same in organic as it is in Fsma, and things like what was harvested when and sold to whom. So we were doing that stuff anyway, and it's just a good idea to stay organized and not only sanitary, but keep some records of the sanitation efforts. Food safety is paramount. If you are wanting to grow your business, it doesn't hurt to just get in the habit of tracking these things because, well, you could get to the point where you fall under the Fsma standards one day and you'd already be in the flow of doing the Fsma requirements. So that's the first part of the question, and feel free to flesh out what I missed or glossed over in the comments section, listeners and or watchers, and we can tackle that on Friday. But to the second part of Joe's question about the limits of scale of a bio-intensive no-till market garden, I will tackle in the third segment. A lot of tackling going on here. Anyway, be right back.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Farmhand. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to be in the field growing food for my community, not creating elaborate pack lists, not writing newsletters or responding to emails, not designing and maintaining web stores, and etc. And I especially don't enjoy doing those things after an already full and fulfilling day of growing food. Actually, if I spent less time on my phone and behind the computer, that would be great. If only there were a solution for that. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for farmers. With one single platform, Farmhand enables you to offload your administrative tasks, send and manage communications, and sell more to your customers. Farmhand saves growers an average of 6 hours of administrative load each week. That's 6 hours so you can get back into the field, spend more time with friends or family, or have a life outside of the farm, which is actually a thing. Think about it. What would you do with an extra 6 hours a week? Sign up for a free trial with the link in the show notes because now is the best time to dial in those systems for the next growing season. Follow the Farmhand link in the show notes to learn more. All right, back to the show.
All right, so continuing on with Joe's original question, Joe asked what I think the limits of scale of a bio-intensive no-till market garden are, i.e. how many people per acre or labor hours per acre, gross revenue per acre, etc. Now, as Joe notes, this is a highly contextual question. Like if you can grow and sell an acre of baby greens, it could in theory gross like $500,000 per acre per year. But moving that many baby greens at a decent price is not easy to do. Or if you could sell like an acre of tomato seeds, that's probably like $1 million business. Unfortunately, selling that many seeds is going to be practically impossible. So in terms of gross revenue from an acre, a good first goal for most folks is to get to that $100,000 per acre or roughly that ratio. So like $50,000 on half an acre or $75,000 on 3/4 of an acre or whatever. And I guess I'm measuring the garden space there based on the amount of space your beds and paths take up together because you kind of have to manage both. But you could measure that however you like. It's kind of all arbitrary. To be sure, some folks, especially those in higher end markets, can earn considerably more than that per acre. Like if you can sell tomatoes at $8 a pound, you can literally double the amount of money most people make per acre on tomatoes. Some folks in lower markets, most people, I would assume, will earn less. I think just having that $100,000 per acre number as a first goal is a good idea, but don't compare yourself to people who are growing in high-end markets or people who have been growing for a long time. The first few years will be tough. Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say, so don't do that to yourself. Now, that $100,000 per acre number is gross revenue, meaning raw revenue without any money taken out for expenses. Once you start subtracting expenses like labor, etc., that number shrinks quickly, so be prepared. How someone manages their own labor costs for their own work is often personal and up to them. But let's just say, for argument's sake, but really for simplicity's sake, that you, the farmer, are just going to take whatever is left over from the $100,000 per acre that you earned or whatever. Generally, I would say it takes roughly 3 people per acre to run an intensive market garden, depending on what you're growing and what the mechanization looks like. Sure, 2 young idealistic people can run an acre of production and 3 people can run 2 acres or more, again, depending on the mechanization, energy level, experience level, etc. But For the kinds of crops we grow and the amount of hand labor required to harvest, wash, and pack them, let alone plant them, that 3 to 1 acre ratio is just about right. Just think if your average unit, like a head of lettuce or a bunch of carrots or a pound of tomatoes or whatever is, whatever you consider a unit, is $3, you would need to sell over 33,000 of them to make $100,000 per acre in gross sales. That's a lot of packing stuff. All right, so 3 people on 1 acre achieving a gross revenue of $100,000 per acre. Let's just hang out with that for a minute. The 2 employees who are not yourself are probably going to be at least $25,000 in labor for a season, which of course depends on a million factors, like how long the season is, how much you pay them, etc. But even if your season is short, $25,000 is a good guess, or at least like a good way of thinking about it, because they also come with expenses like making mistakes, crashing tractors, forgetting to turn off irrigation, normal human stuff. So that brings you down to about $50,000 remaining. Then you subtract another completely arbitrary, let's say $6,000 to $10,000 for expenses on that acre, and you're down to about $40,000 to $44,000 per acre for the farmer. That would be kind of like your net income. Now, things change as you extend the seasons, as you get better at growing. Things change as you expand to the farm. You can dial those practices in and the numbers in more and more as you go, and you get better and crunch your costs and increase your revenue. As you increase acreage, which you should not do until you have maximized your revenue off the first acre, you will need additional employees. So that net income per acre number is not the net income per every acre. The net goes down because the farmer can't suddenly be the third person in every acre, meaning the labor costs go from $50,000 to $75,000 per acre or whatever, because you need another employee to make up for what you can't do. So anyway, I tried to go a little above and beyond if I could there for the question, but that's a basic breakdown. After you get the farm rolling, and if you kick decent butt at it, you can earn a reasonable lower middle class income. But also eat like a king, so there's that. Like I always say, farming is just another small business. Most small businesses, be they small restaurants or retail stores or whatever, earn the owner $40,000 to $70,000 a year. Farming is just heavier, hotter, and tastier. People who make it in this industry and make a really respectable living, like above that $70,000 mark, really focus in on the business side. They dial in the numbers and they just figure out how to be more efficient. It's as much or more about that part than the ability to grow food. And frankly, the business side has always been the hardest side for me and my brain. So like any good coach, I'm here to tell you to learn from my mistakes and learn to love and appreciate the business side. Anyways, let me know your thoughts and experiences around farming numbers per acre and labor, etc. And I'm going to wrap it up there. Huge shouts to anyone who signed up for the MLS Fantasy League. Also shouts to my Brighton and Hove Albion Seagulls. Let's go. Who will be playing an important game shortly after this podcast goes up. I think it's like at 2:30 or something Eastern. But before we go, I want to give one last shout out to the good folks over at Rimmel Greenhouses for making this show possible. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. Big thanks to all of our show sponsors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team over there at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music you hear now. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer over at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, looks like we got one. Chris Miller. Chris discovers that they have a talent, a superpower of sorts. And basically, they can't really travel through time, but they learned that they can change people's first names. And they can observe how that changes the future. So they can change people's first names from when they were born and observe how that changed their lives. And you'd be surprised how many things that changes for people and doesn't change for people. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching and/or listening. We will see you tomorrow.